Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters. My name is Adam Torres, and if you'd like to apply to be a guest on the show, just head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to Apply. All right, so today is a very special episode. We got some announcements going on. These are one of my favorite episodes. So first off, we have Rodrigo Larayo on the line, who is the CEO of Cyberverse Advisors. And I'm proud to announce the newly minted Cyber Connective Corp. Rodrigo, hey, first I just want to say welcome back to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be back, Adam.
Oh man, so we got a book coming out that we're working on together. But today, the main event and what I'm really excited about is to get into your concept and the new startup that you're launching as well. So Cyber Connective Corp. So we're gonna get into all of this, of course, and I'll hold myself back for a moment though, because we're gonna start this episode the way that we start them all, with what we like to call our Mission Matters Minute. So, Rodrigo, we at Mission Matters, we amplify stories for entrepreneurs, executives, and experts. That's our mission. Rodrigo, what mission matters to you?
Well, in one word, the mission that matters to me is technology and the intelligent use of technology. I think that there's nothing, and I'm biased, of course, but there's nothing more important and more crucial and critical for our society than technology and the intelligent use of technology. Technology, like so many other things, is a tool, and it can be used for the good and can be used for the bad. And for me, my mission is the intelligent use of technology and ensuring that the technology is used for the good and for the progress and the advancement of our society.
Yeah, that's great. Love bringing mission-based individuals and entrepreneurs on the line to share their mission, why they do what they do, how they're doing it, and what we can all learn from it so we grow together. So great having you back on. And I know we had this script and all these other things we were going to go through, but man, I can't wait. So Cyber Connective Corp, tell me the story. I know we've been talking about this for a while, but let's just start with that one. Like how'd this come about?
Well, it's really a long story in the making, right? I think we talked and you interviewed me probably about a year ago.
Yeah.
And this idea was already germinating in my head. And, coming and having left the corporate world in early 22, that idea was germinating in my head in terms of the intelligent use of technology and the advancement of our society with technology. And, it always takes longer than you think. I think when we talked about here, next month I'll get it done. And here we are a year later, and it was, 30 minutes ago that we finally coined the name of the company. I'm sure you've been in some of these meetings where you're talking with your lawyers and you're incorporating the company, and they go like, that name is taken. You need to come up with a different. And then it was like back and forth, and then suddenly Cyber Connective, and then touch on the computer. It's available. Do it.
Oh my gosh.
So Cyber Connective Corporation, it's going to be incorporated this week. And it's all going to be about the intelligent use of cybersecurity. Cyber Connective Corporation, the idea of the Cyber Connective Corporation is really all those connections, all of that data, all of the information that exists in the corporations in the world, and the finding of the needle in the haystack, and understanding what is wrong with the environment, what is wrong with the cybersecurity. And this technology allows you to pinpoint and find what needs to be fixed in your in your environment to increase your cybersecurity and safeguard your organization.
It's great. And I know, so one of the concepts that we've kind of talked about is this idea of, we know the CISO, so the Chief Information Security Officer, but that concept of bringing virtual capabilities maybe to the seat into other companies, maybe tell us a little bit more about that and that concept.
Yes. So, I was a CISO for about 7 years for a very large global corporation. Before that, I spent many years as a CISO in the financial world, and it's a very uncomfortable world. There's this meme about this. How do the C-level sleep? And then you have the CEO, and he's sleeping on his side, and the CFO, he's sleeping on the back, and then you have the empty bed, and this is how the CISO sleeps rather. So it's a very difficult and uncomfortable situation. So the CISOs need all the help that they can get. And the idea is that we can, through technology, and obviously it's very fashionable to talk about artificial intelligence right now, but we have evidences in the interview that we recorded a year ago that I was already talking about AI and the use of AI, the creation of this virtual CISO to help the CISOs in the organization, and also because this is part of the missions matters. What matters to me in terms of my mission? Because large organizations, they tend to have deep pockets. They can hire high level and high good CISOs. What about the small businesses? What about the medium businesses that they can't afford a CISO? So I think that that's where technology can come in, and that's where AI can come in and start providing to smaller organizations that perhaps cannot afford a full-time CISO, but they can afford a virtual CISO. And my organization is also about the fractional CISOs. But I think that the virtual CISO and the intelligent CISO is actually even a better solution for a small business, and can act as a sounding board for the CISOs of the large organizations. So the mission is really to bring AI into the CISO world.
And I have some questions on that, but before we get into that, I think probably we should spend a little bit of time on so that people understand the fractional side of things too, is the Cyberverse advisors and what you're doing there. So maybe talk a little bit about that before we dig deeper.
Yes, and I spent 20 years in the consulting world. Worked in finance and in many different industries as a consultant, and then I spent about 10 years working as a CIO and a CISO. So although I've done the work of the CIO, I've done the work of the CISO, the advisor and the consulting, that's in my bloodstream. And for me, consultants tend to get the bad rap, and they say that consultants, you spend too much on consultants. But for me, they really play a critical role. So for me, the fractional CIO and the fractional CISO is something that of a underutilized resource for many organizations that might not have the means to have a full-time CIO or CISO, but definitely can and should be able to have in their ranks somebody at that level that can provide and support at the strategy level. And that, for me, is really a very critical mission that consulting organizations can play to provide fractional cybersecurity executives to organizations that are in need.
Yeah. And the way I see it now is like, and I was trying to kind of wrap my head around your model and what you were doing. And I feel like, other positions, maybe in the C-suite or otherwise or even just departments overall, like they've kind of gone through some of these transformations. I guess the closest example, just off the top of my head, would be maybe like the CFO, right? Like some certain companies that maybe they're not quite big enough yet to have a full-time or the type of CFO they want, but they need support for their internal staff. So maybe they hire some fractional services or consultants to help lead the direction of the finances and otherwise. And then maybe there is some type of, of course there is other types of technologies and things that they're using to support the functions of both the fractional CFO and also the internal staff that are actually managing the day-to-day work. I'm trying to make sense of all this. Does this kind of apply to what you're doing, except on the technology side of things, specifically around the CISO's role? Am I kind of off on this, or like help me with that?
No, you're not off. That's exactly what I talk about when I talk about the fractional CISOs, the fractional C-level executive. Unfortunately, as I said, it's underutilized by organizations. It has a bad reputation in the marketplace, but I think it's undeserved. I think that organizations are much better served by having access to a C-level executive that has the experience of being a C-level executive. So if they can't afford a 100% CISO, it's better to have access to somebody that can guide the staff than try to identify within the staff somebody that to play that role, but doesn't have the qualifications for it. So for me, it's very critical for organizations today to understand that they're better off by having a fractional CISO than none at all.
Yeah. And I know, and you mentioned obviously your background, your consulting, and, your tenure with, working with large corporations and large companies. So I know one of the things that you're also, highly involved in is advising VCs and really the C-suite just in general on technology moving forward. How did you kind of how did you get into that piece of things once you maybe, let's just say, exited the corporate world and began your entrepreneurial journey? Like, how did all that take place?
It was when I was, before I was at Laureate as a CISO, CIO there. I played a role internally in my previous consulting company. I played a role as part of the due diligence team for the M&A group. So when the corporation wanted to acquire new companies, I was part of the due diligence that would go and evaluate the company, and I was in charge of evaluating them from a technology and cybersecurity perspective. Yeah. So when I left Laureate last year, I really thought, well, that was something that I really enjoyed, and when I started Cyberverse Advisors, that was something that I told to myself, well, here I am, 30 years in the corporate world. I'm now starting my own business, and maybe this will lead a little bit for us to talk about the theme of the book that is coming. But it's really about ensuring that you have a good work and life balance, and making sure that you are doing what you like and what you enjoy. So that was the question that I asked myself: what do I want Cyberverse Advisors to do? And that was something that I thoroughly enjoyed. I made a point of getting involved in those areas.
Yeah, and I know some of the organizations or things you work with, often like the Alchemist Accelerator. So you work with different accelerators, ECN. Tell me a little bit more about the work and kind of how you really just dove into this whole field.
Yeah, it's interesting. I dove in at the wrong time. Because we all know what happened in 2022, where with the crisis in the financial markets. So kind of all the funds available for venture capitalists and private equity funds kind of took a dive. So that's why I jokingly said that I got involved at the wrong time, because the money was not flowing as it was in the previous years. But that's really what I got involved, because my function actually, I say that I got involved at the wrong time. I probably should say it's at the right time, because when there's plenty of money to go around, you kind of invest in everything that moves. But when the money is not readily available, then the function of the advising and identifying the good startup from the bad startup, the startup with the high potential with a startup from the low potential, that's when there's not so many funds available, that becomes extremely more important and valuable. And so trying to understand, trying to judge, yes, this is a high potential startup versus this is
Mm.
a startup that has either too much competition in there, trying to go into a market that is not going to grow.
Mm.
That becomes a mission that matters
Yeah.
more.
What's one of your favorite things about kind of working with these accelerators and just evaluating these new companies? Because to me, I mean, I get to have conversations like with individuals, like, and for the record, I mean, come on, you launched I think we're one of the first people outside of your lawyers and yourself that and the people in the room that you've already talked to in the last since coming on the show, but we're one of the first people to know the name of your new company and your new startup. So I love being a part of this. This is what gets me excited and fired up. What excites you about working in this community, in that startup community, and evaluating these companies?
It's the I had a colleague back at Lawhead that always used to say is the conversation of the possibilities.
Mm.
What really excites me about being in this world it's a conversation where everything is possible,
Mm.
where you are literally daydreaming, and for me that's critical. That's we can't live without dreaming.
Mm.
I've always been a very ambitious person. I've always been a very there's no challenge that I ever said no, and I always raised my hand to face a new challenge. So being involved in those startups, being involved in those big ideas, and what we can turn it into 10 years from today, for me that's really what really drives me, is really drafting those ideas, imagining those concepts, and then taking them to bringing them to reality.
Yeah. What do you like about working with the VC community, like specifically? I mean, just the people that are actually deploying the capital. I feel like that has to maybe even provide some unique insight to the way that they're thinking as well on that side of things. Of course, you're bringing the technology standpoint and ultimately kind of hopefully validating or saying, giving your opinion either way on the technology side. But anything specific that stands out, like working with the VC community?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question, right?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously the VC community can have a very bad reputation, right?
Yeah.
It's the financial world. Unfortunately, the capitalist system is the least worst of all the systems.
I love the way you put that.
So for me, you can view all the defects
Mm-hmm.
and the problems that capitalism has, and you can
Yeah.
say, "Oh, uh, VCs are only in it for the money."
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, that's true. They're only in it for the money, but uh, that's what really unlocks our future.
Mm.
Without the VCs, or without that investment, we wouldn't have Google. We
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't have Airbnb. We wouldn't have all of those big companies
Yeah.
that I think we can all agree that brought something to our world and to our
Mm-hmm.
society that is positive. So yes, they're in it for the money, but they're also what allows dreams to become reality.
Yeah, yeah, well said. And I guess the same kind of, we've talked a bit about the VC side of things, but I know you also work actively with the C-suite and other large companies that might be looking at, acquiring new technologies or expanding or a lot of different things, or testing ideas that they're currently working on internally, like a lot of different ways to kind of slice that one. Like how does that all take place? Like, how do you kind of get in a company and work with the C-suite for those larger corporations?
That's also the continuation of bringing dreams and visions to reality.
Yeah.
We know that in the world today, it's very difficult to what as they call it, to grow organically. So companies are always looking at acquisitions as a way to grow. And for example, you they don't get a lot of credit. They don't get a lot of publicity around it. But one of the biggest acquisition machines in the world is Apple. They don't advertise it, but they have an absolutely fantastic acquisition machine, and they acquire and incorporate technology in and bring it into their product. So for me, any serious organization, any large organization that is intent in growing, they need to look at acquisitions. They constantly need to be scanning the market, looking at what the market is doing, identifying the technology, and bringing the technology to enhance their own products. So any really good company needs to look at M&A as part of their strategy. You cannot be a large company without a significant investment in scanning for new technologies and incorporating those new technologies into their product set.
Yeah. And one of the things, so just kind of circling back to something that you mentioned earlier about like the fractional model and how all these things work. To me, I've always been a big fan of the fractional model because I guess, well, for one, because we've used it internally, but as a company, but also, and I see the benefits, but also it just kind of, to me, when you step back and look at it, it kind of makes sense from the standpoint of when you have one individual that's, in-house working, which is of course completely fine. But they're day in and day out working on your company. Of course, they may be looking to, you send them to a conference a couple times a year. They subscribe to the industry newsletters. They do whatever it needs to be to keep their skills fresh and to stay like current on whatever's happening in the industry. That's great. But then you look at the other side of bringing in a consultant or somebody fractional who may have a whole book of clients from different industries and different size of companies. But there's more learning to be done when you're doing that day to day, because I feel like that cross-pollination of ideas and learning and things, like to get that internally, whether it's just not the same. Am I off on that, or?
No, I don't think you're off. It's a real dilemma and the real problem. I've been a consultant, and one of the uncomfortable situations is that sometimes organizations treat their consultants as, I'm going to call them, second-class citizens.
Yeah.
I remember, working in my company, and we had a back room, and kind of the room that had the old chairs and the old tables, and it was the consultants' room. It was where we shoved all the consultants in. The guys that we came in and we put them.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, there is a tendency for companies to devalue the value that consultants bring, and I would advise against it. There's no better tool than a good consultant or a fractional resource in your organization. And the good consultants, because there are also the good consultants and the bad consultants.
For sure,
good consultants, they wear the shirt of the client, and there's no better value for an organization to find and work with a good consultant that can bring them expertise and experience they do not have internally. And generally, consultants do always work with the best interest of the clients in mind. And organization can really only grow by using consultants. I will tell you a story. In my own organization, when I came to Laureate in 2015, I came in as the Chief Information Security Officer. And then on day one, I found myself in a room, and the entire information security department was me, myself, and I.
Yeah.
And very quickly, I actually decided on a strategy that I was going to use contract to hire as a strategy to build my team. And I built a team of close to 100 people a few years later. And my best people came from consultants and contractors that I onboarded. And then when I saw the value that they brought, then I hired them as employees. Till today, I found that that's a very good strategy to use consultants, bring the value. And then if you really need then you turn them into employees. Of course, consulting companies don't like me to say this, but that's definitely a good strategy that I would advise organizations to have a good contract to hire strategy.
So, Rodrigo, I do want to spend a little bit of time on the book that we're launching together today. So just for everybody watching this, just to let you know, we're not going to spend too much time on it. This is just a little teaser, and it's intentional because we will be bringing Rodrigo back onto the show when the book is actually live and out. And obviously, we want you to pick up a copy. But for today's conversation, Rodrigo, kind of keeping it high level, what are some of the things you hope to propose in the upcoming book? And I'm not holding you to this. I know we're still in editing, but what are some of the things you hope to propose?
When I became a CIO, I became a CIO 2 weeks before COVID hit. And, COVID brought to our life and our societies a reevaluation of our priorities. All of a sudden, we were starting to question the value of the workplace, the value of us, of us type A personalities that only have time for job and we don't have time for ourselves or our family or our loved ones. And the book is all about that. It's all about really making sure that we have a good and proper work-life balance. And I think is a theme that was important at COVID, and obviously it was very important because I may be exaggerating, but technology saved the day, right? How could all the business
continue? You're not exaggerating. It did.
Without the tools that we are using today, right?
Yeah.
So technology saved the day, and for me, I'm very dissatisfied with some of the other business leaders that are in our society that are now trying to force everybody back to the office. And the book and my thoughts are a little bit about business leaders reevaluating themselves and really thinking, do we really want to go back to the way of working that we had before? I mean, we were forced into it by COVID, but we stumbled into a work model that actually serves better people, serves better our lives. And I think, I truly believe this, also serves better the organizations. So the book is a reflection in terms of our work models, our philosophy, and our balance between the lives of the employees and the success of the corporations.
Yeah. It's great. I'm going to cut you off there. Got a ton of questions, but saving them for the next time. And just want to tell you, hey, I'm excited to go on this journey with you and to get this book published. So we're still putting everything together. We're still doing the final touches in the back end, but for everybody watching, more to come. Don't worry. But for today, Rodrigo, again, been great having you on the show. I just have to ask, what's next? I mean, what's next for you? What's next for Cyber Connective Corp, Cyberverse Advisors? You got a lot going on. What's next?
What's next? It's actually not what's next. I funny enough, I was having this conversation early this morning. I also started a foundation, a nonprofit foundation about a year ago, and I have not devoted enough time to my nonprofit foundation, which is about cycling, which is the other passion in my life. I have technology, and cycling is also my passion. And my wish for the second half of this year or into 24 is that I have more time to devote to my Cycling Unbound Foundation and building that foundation and really turning cycling into something that is more accepted in the U.S. society. I have European origins, and in Europe, cycling is a very well accepted way of transport. But I think we're trailing there in the US, and I hope to play a role in terms of growing the acceptance of commuting by bike and enjoying nature and extending our healthy lives through cycling.
Man, it's great. Love to help you and to continue to promote your efforts, and also hearing more about your nonprofit. That being said, if somebody's watching this and they want to connect with you and your team to learn more about your companies or nonprofit or otherwise, what's the best way for people to do that?
Well, connect with me on LinkedIn. Rodrigo Loheiro. You can look me up by Cycling Unbound, my foundation, Cyberverse Advisors, my company. And by the time this goes live, you can Google Cyber Connective Corporation, and you'll be able to get in touch with us.
Oh, that's fantastic. And we'll put all that information, by the way, in the show notes so that our audience can just click on the links and head right on over, and definitely connect with Rodrigo on LinkedIn. Speaking of the audience, if this is your first time with Mission Matters or engaging in an episode, we're all about bringing on business owners, entrepreneurs, and executives and having them share their mission, the reason behind their mission, why they do what they do, and what we can all learn from that so that we all grow together. That's the whole point of this platform, is that we all want to grow together. If that's the type of content that sounds interesting or fun or exciting to you, we welcome you. Hit that subscribe button. We have many more mission-based individuals coming up on the line, and we don't want you to miss a thing. Rodrigo, really, man, appreciate you coming back on the show. Can't wait till the next time we get to do this again. Thanks again for coming on.
Thank you, and talk to you soon.